The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
All right, everybody, we are back with Paul Hansell, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about his showbiz experience. And we are doing this from the Westgate Resort here in Las Vegas, in the International Showroom, and just down the hall from Elvis Presley's dressing room. And like we said before, there's a water leak from the ceiling coming into Elvis's dressing room. They're trying to fix right now as we speak. So we're going to sit here and talk a little bit about more show business with Paul. Let me make sure I got this on right here, Paul. There we go. Now you should be on.
Okay, yeah, I think
There you are.
There we go.
I hit the mute button over on Paul.
Probably I should be muted with some of these stories, but
Yeah.
I'll keep it as clean as I can.
Yeah. So anyways, here we are talking about showbiz again, and we're going to keep talking about your stories because, a lot of people don't understand how much, they see the scenery, they see all the stuff, but they don't realize how many people it takes on one of these big shows in wardrobe. Wardrobe is a huge part of these big shows. If you're just doing a performer, like, you're doing a one-off night with some band, you usually have one or two people in wardrobe to take care of, steaming and sewing repairs and whatever it may need be for the performer. But some of these shows, like when we did Starlight Express, would we have 24 wardrobe on that? Mm-hmm. To try to keep the costumes in repair and dressing. Oh man, it was a lot of work for them people.
Yeah, I had friends that were on that show, on stage and off stage, and I know they had huge drying rooms just to put those costumes under fans because they just would get soaked because it was.
Can I tell you the story about that one?
Please do. Yeah.
Here's a story about it, and this is 100% true. Down in the other end of the hotel, there was what they called the drying room, and there was two huge fans in it, but they also made it so that room could get up to 200 degrees, so that you could dry a costume out in a matter of 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Because these costumes were huge, heavy, and filled with sweat because these guys were working, roller skating stuff. So 200 degrees, fans blowing, keeping them all, trying to keep them dry and ready for the next show. You couldn't stand in there more than, just a couple minutes to go grab a thing, roll it out. You stood in there, 5-10 minutes, man. You were literally getting cooked in that room. That was a great idea, well implemented, and they got it so it worked just fine. One thing they forgot about, the fire sprinkler system was set for 195 degrees, 195.
Oops.
Yeah. And one day, pop, they went off and drenched all of the costumes.
Counterproductive to the cause.
Yeah. Drenched the costumes, got more water, and it happened during the day, which was weird because it wasn't even on. It just had weakened it so much, the stuff, that finally one of the sprinklers popped, and one pops, a bunch of them start going. And so that room got flooded, this basement, and it was like 2 inches deep in water, and it was like all hands on deck, wardrobe, get in here, we have a show tonight. They got it fixed, water out, pumped out, cleaned out, all the costumes washed, rinsed, redone, and we did a show that night. Wardrobe kicked butt on that thing. I was, head carpenter. I'm just finding vacuums we could suck up the water and pump it into. Well, it was everybody on this as fast as we can get this out of here. And while we're doing that, wardrobe's being called, get in here as fast as you can. We're in trouble.
Yeah.
And they did it, and I was just amazed because they didn't stop. All the washing and the drying and the drying. Oh man! But they were heroes that day. They really were. So.
Well, wardrobe tends to do that, and I think a lot of people expect a lot out of wardrobe for that very reason. We can do so much with so little and make it work.
Yeah.
I was recently on a production of Jersey Boys over at the Orleans, and there was a bunch of people out sick. They ended up putting people on covering roles that they were not hired to cover. So in the course of 8 hours, between being on the phone with the designer for the show, because it was very strictly regulated what you could put on stage, and sewing, and they had to build costumes because there were none for these. For the, like the woman who plays Sarah, she was not a cover for anybody else. They had to build her 2 other complete sets of costumes. And the stage manager came in, who was an old friend of mine, and said, well, tra-la-la-la. I went, oh, hold on. I said, why isn't wardrobe being given any credit for this? Well, what did they do? And I spelled it out to her. She goes, I didn't know. I said, well, now you do. But and this is why wardrobe, whatever they throw at us, we'll make it work, because their failure is not an option. And I have great respect for my fellow wardrobe people, especially the stitchers and stuff who do what they do, because they do it really, really well.
Yeah. Well, the creed is the show must go on.
And it does.
And it does,
Yeah.
one way or another.
Right.
Sometimes just
You may be pinned and stapled into it, but you're going on stage
You're
with
going on
something to
stage.
wear that is appropriate and make it work. And there are tons of stories of stuff like that happening.
yeah, they have to do it. I mean, on stage, it's the same thing with guys. I've been up there many times, and we're trying to fix something to get it to run that night, and it's like, doors are going to open, crowds coming in. Are we going to make it? I don't know. How long do we have? We got 5 minutes. Maybe.
And the thing is, the more technical equipment, the more, over the years, even since I started the business, the equipment that you deal with, and the lighting and sound, and now they're, with the screens and
Video,
stuff,
yeah.
video, it's so crazy that one little thing goes out and you're messed up. And to keep all that running seamlessly is amazing. And the thing is, the audience shouldn't know. They should see the final product, and it should be amazing. I saw a production of Peter Pan at the Smith Center not long ago. There were things about it was a kind of a redo. There were things I really liked and things I didn't care for. But the CGI, oh my God, when Peter Pan was flying, it's like you were right on his shoulder flying
Oh, that's
through
so
the city.
cool.
It was so amazing.
Yeah.
I was blown away. And like I said, there were the parts that I wish they hadn't messed with that. Like there was no Nana the dog. It's like, where's Nana? You got to have Nana.
Yeah.
But the CGI was phenomenal.
Yeah. Barry did one of those type of things, and he was flying around New York, saying, oh, and there's Radio City Music Hall. And it looked like he jumped into the screen the way we did it, and then he jumped back out of it, a video wall, and it was just a quick opening, close, all these things we were doing. And it looked really good. But, same thing, people 3D, they did it in 3D, so you're actually flying down Broadway. Wow. And he goes, oh, there's such and such, waving at people and stuff. And then it comes down and, on the big screen upstage, and he lands, and there he is standing there, and he walks. It was a really good.
That's
really
the
good
part
look.
of the technology of stage work that I so admire. And I think it enhances what happens on stage is when you can integrate these, things. Yeah. Or we were doing a production of Frozen at the Smith Center, and the scene where what's her name is all in black, and all of a sudden she's all in blue and white, and I had to watch it 4 times to see exactly what was going on, and it was just amazing. The costume changes. Same thing with Cinderella, with the old witch turning into the fairy godmother, just a thing, and it's and that's not CGI. That's like someone who designed the costumes in such a way to make them work, and it's stunning.
And when it works, it's just when everything works. you sit and you look at it and you go, wow, I love this business.
Yeah.
I just love being a part of this. It's like you get that feel like, wow, we're
doesn't
doing
get
it
any
right.
better,
Yeah,
right?
We're doing it right, man.
But the sprinkler system, I have a little story from Phantom, the Las Vegas Spectacular. It was during the day when none of us were there. Well, the day crew was there, and they were testing the water cannons. Well, they had it set up where they could set them off, but nothing came out. They just to make sure everything was okay, in case there was a huge fire they could blow. Well, apparently something happened. They hit the water cannons, walked away, the water cannons ran for 13 minutes before they discovered, and it was the head of the day shift wardrobe saw water coming under from the electrical room. And we thought I heard tell that water and electricity not a good thing.
Yeah.
But we were out for like a week or two. They had to open up walls. It was 13 minutes of these water cannons just spewing the cannons of water into the theater. But they got it all cleaned up. But we were out for a few, it may have only been a few days, but it was a huge mess they had to clean up. And there were some things that, they call Maria the chandelier. Sometimes it would get stuck, and the gondola, because everything was by remote.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff never really worked all the time as well as should because of what happened. But it was crazy.
Yeah, I think I saw that 4 or 5 times, that show, because I'd go over to see Carlin, my brother-in-law, go see Carlin, and and I'd get there early or so before the show was over and go and watch it, halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, and go sit back there and just watch it again. And I loved that show. That was just an amazing show.
That particular production was Hal Prince and Andrew Lloyd Webber's favorite version, the 90-minute version. And it was stunning. I mean, it was stunning.
It was.
I saw it first before I was hired in to dress it. And that was, we worked 6 days a week, and we did 2 shows on our Friday and 2 shows on our Monday. I mean, it was challenging, but we did it. But then there was a night we were resetting the show, and my friend Pauline Lamb and I were in the elevator taking costumes up, and the elevator failed. We were stuck in there. I thought, okay, as long as we're out by 2 o'clock, by 2 a.m., to go home, I don't care. And my worst fear of being stuck in an elevator is having to go to the bathroom. I didn't have to. So we were in for like a half hour, and they kept saying, "Are you all right?" "Yeah, we're fine." "Are you sure?" Yeah, we're big boy and girl. We're good. We sat on the floor, and we just had a lovely chat. And eventually they got to work. But of course, these days there are no elevator techs on site. They're an hour and a half away. They have to come over. But they eventually got us out. But it was like, okay, I'm on the clock. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, I missed lunch, but that didn't, But it was, it was just such a stunning show to be a part of. And I got to be on the crew where we loaded it out. We spent a week, take like all the dummies or the mannequins that were in the balconies and stuff as part of the set dressing, taking all those out. And those are some strange looking, especially the kids. They were kind of scary looking.
Well, they have to project. You have to look up there and see that it's actually a kid or something like that from a distance. And, so they have to have features. Yeah, but you get up close on some of those things. You're like,
oh, it was, and it was, especially when they were all stacked up together in the green room and we were taking the costumes off. And, I got to be an expert. I found I was an expert in wrapping, doing the shrink wrap. We would put a costume together. We had our head. Took like 45 minutes to wrap one. He was real meticulous. I would get it, and I would just run around till I was so dizzy I was going to throw up. And then I would stop, and then I would just keep running around, and okay, we're done. 2 minutes, we're done. And but it was a great way to end that show. That was, doing the loadout is always, to me, that was like completion. Having closure from that. And I was there for the last 2.5 years.
Oh, nice.
Of the run. And it was, again, the performers were lovely, most of them. The ones I dressed were great. And it was, and they invited me to perform with them at Golden Rainbow. So I got to do that. I did that with the producers and with Phantom, and that was a lot of fun. The last year, though, we did a take on Circle of Life from Sweet Charity to... we wrote the lyrics that show's ending, we got to go to LA and audition, and it was hilarious, and it was such a great response from the audience. They just screamed for us. That was a wonderful experience to be able to do that, and I was always very grateful to be able to get up and be a part of those events for them, and like for producers, the man I dressed, Rich Affinato, He was one of the, as soon as I met him, I loved him. It was like, oh my God, I've known you for 100 years. And we were very close, and he has since passed away. But whenever they did a special event, they would take me, and whenever they called the cast up on stage, he'd go, come on, you're coming with us. And there were a bunch of people around town thought I was in the show because I would be up on stage with the cast. So it was very sweet that they included me
Nice.
the way
Yeah.
they did. And it was, and that show was so much fun to do because it was like, it was a 90-minute show. We did 6 shows a week. 6 shows a week. So it'd be like, keep the car running. I got to run and do a show, or I'll be right back. Because it was like, boom, boom, you were in and out. And it was I thought it was a great show. A lot of people have trouble with the Nazi aspect of it. But it was such a lark, and it was...
Yeah, it was poking fun at that whole thing.
It was. And I had brought friends in, and I had to move their seats around, and I thought, oh, they were in the back and stuff. And she came up later, she goes, how did you arrange it that we were sitting right next to, what's his name who wrote it? It's out of my head.
Was it Mel Brooks?
Mel Brooks.
Really?
We were sitting right next to Mel Brooks. Thank
Oh,
you
my
for doing that. I
heavens.
went, you're welcome. I had no idea he was even in the house, but they were sitting right next to him. It was like, okay. I thought I was trading you out for crappy seats, but anyway, you were in the back with Mel Brooks seeing his show.
Wow.
That's as good as it gets.
Yeah. I would put it on the list of the best things in life on seeing it. That's one of them.
Right.
So
And also that cast, they'd gotten a bunch of free tickets for them to see Jubilee. Well, we went in with the cast. It was their favorite show in Las Vegas. We would go in once a month to see Jubilee, and I used to just look down they were like, they just loved that show. Even the stripped down version towards the end, it was before the last, where they kind of screwed it up with the new choreography and everything. But they were enamored with that show. And the cast, they would go through the cast, producers are here tonight. And it would usually be Thursday night, the Thursday night show, which is right before their day off, and they were done for the week. Because that show's hard. That show's a grind. And they would kind of wave and smile. They would just beam because they would hoop and holler. And I mean, these kids from New York, they had never seen anything like it.
Oh, yeah.
And they loved that show. And I was heartbroken when the show closed. I thought, how can you do, I had actually ran into Blair Farrington. I don't know if you know Blair.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, I've worked with Blair over the years. I said, you are the only man I know, the only person I know that could revive that show properly, because all that show needed was updating. It didn't need to be changed and all that. He goes, well, he actually had a meeting with him, but I think it was by design, because once the show closed, they didn't have to pay Fluff the rights, the choreography rights, because Don Arden choreographed most of that stuff. And he got certain rights that were paid to him. And once that show closed, they didn't have to pay it anymore. But what a waste. And I did work for a minute on the pre-production of the Dita Von Teese show. And all those costumes were there. But everything it's been years. And, the elevators are not working right and stuff. It would take millions to revive that show. But I always thought it was a shame that they ever closed it, because it was an iconic Las Vegas show.
Yep.
Even along with, Casino de Paris, which I saw in 71 or 2 at the Dunes, and the Lido, and the Folies Bergère.
Always. That's
oh my
one.
God.
I almost lost that one, too. I was like,
Okay, it's coming. Please let it come. Please don't, and I got to see all those shows.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like them.
Yeah,
You can do all the stuff you want, and there's nothing wrong with those shows. But Las Vegas, iconic showgirl shows, there's nothing like them.
And you would think they would have kept just one after they had closed all the other ones. At least kept, like I say, Jubilee, because it was the last true
Right.
feathers and costumes and amazing.
Right. There'll never be anything like it again.
No.
Unfortunately, because but it was, and I've seen it when it first opened. I've seen it in all its incarnations. Eventually they cut the cast down stuff. But when it first opened, oh my God, there were like 150 people in the show. They filled up that stage. I have friends who were in the show, and it was just so cool when it was Hallelujah Hollywood. Its very first incarnation. It was just, you didn't know where to look. You know, there were showgirls coming down. Well, no, maybe that was at the Stardust. I don't know if they came down the Rondelets or not, the Rondelles. But anyhow, there was so much stuff going on. It was just stupid beautiful.
Yeah. Those girls coming down those stairs
Oh,
in high heels with those huge costumes.
those headdresses and backpacks.
How did they never fall down and, I mean, break? It was
It probably
amazing.
happened. You just never saw it.
Yeah, it was just, you just, that's part of it, you know, how do you girls do that? I mean, it's
All
just,
balance. Because they're heavy. I mean,
oh, yeah.
For Adidas show, she did use a lot of the costumes, and it's like, how do these girls? I mean, they were, you know, they kept their weight. You had to be a certain, you know, weight and look and stuff, and you had to look flawless, and they did. But I mean, even like the Samson and Delilah, the Titanic sinking, they did all that stuff long before I was ever really popular. They did it in the late 70s, early 80s, and magnificent, magnificent stories. The Samson and Delilah was one of my favorite, and but it was just an amazing show. There was so much going on, and it was so beautiful, and every number was a different color combination. You know, they had the hot pink headdresses, which they used in the Adidas show, and you know, and the yellow and the black and the stuff, and that end when all those girls and boys were on on the staircase. It was amazing, and they had versions of it in every show. I remember the Casino de Paris show; they had the big mirrored staircase with the hot pink and white costumes and stuff. That was just beautiful. I actually saw it in 1976. It was the bicentennial review, and it was beautiful all those years ago. And the Lido was also, and also Enter the Night, the next incarnation, was also beautiful. The costumes were stunning in that show. I thought they really did a beautiful job putting that show together. But, you know, alas, at least I know I got to be there. I got to see those shows. And I never saw, doesn't matter, at the Flamingo. I know what they called it back, and I can't say it. It's City Lights.
Yeah.
They had another name for it.
Oh, yeah.
Because of and I know the whole backstory to that, but City Lights was a huge show. But I did get to see the Rockettes there. Wonderful show.
Don't you find it amazing that that showroom in the Flamingo is so small? It's like 800 people.
Right.
800 people. And
that's why Donnie and Marie filled it every night. And I got to tell you, there was an amazing show. Donnie and Marie put on such a good show. And it was different every night. And I know that they didn't necessarily rehearse together, but they've been working since they were 5 years old. It was all, here's what we're doing. And I mean, it was small, subtle things, different, and it was flawless every night. And so getting to the Legends story. I love this story. I'm sorry,
because Legends was at Flamingo also, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There was Legends, Donnie and Marie, and George
Wallace. Yep.
Who was also lovely, lovely man. Oh my God! And his show was improv every night. It was. I would stay. I was doing laundry, which I eventually ended up doing laundry in a lot of shows. But I would stay to do laundry after Donnie and Marie, and I would hear a show, and it was different every night, and he was hilarious. Legends. It was St. Patrick's Day, and I'd gotten free tickets, and I took my friend to see it, and we're sitting there, and Elvis comes on, who was like an older, kind of punchier Elvis, and something was going on, and he was dropping his mic, and not quite all there, and
so it was the older Elvis then.
he was the older Elvis, yeah. And at some point, he was the drummer. He said, "Give him a little something, show him what you know how to do," and the drummer just sat there and looked at him, and I went, "Oh, there are issues here." And he kept on, like, just play a little something, just blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. And then, so he decided to go on. Well, he dropped his mic a few more times, looked at someone in the audience and told him to shut up twice. And my friend Dan Romano was working the fly. I said, "Dan, what's going on?" "Oh, he's drunk." like drunk. And I know I should tell you this part of it, but apparently at some point he went backstage and exposed himself to his head of wardrobe and said something like, "What can you do with this?" And she wasn't going to say anything, and they went, "Oh, yes, you are." The end of the show, the big finale, well, of course, he's got the showgirls and the big Viva Las Vegas number. He never shows up for it. But those showgirls were out there dancing and working it. And I just thought, this number's never going to end. It was like, without him out there being Elvis, all you had were showgirls dancing their little hearts out. Nothing going on. Nothing was going on. And it seemed like that number went on forever. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is the best day of my life. Because, I didn't tell him to drink. I didn't tell him to do what he did. But I got to witness this mess that he made on stage. Well, I found out later, apparently he's Irish. And he was made to promise he would not drink between shows, which he did, like to the point of doing what he did. And I was out, we were waiting for our car, and there was a young girl who said, "Oh, I've seen this show like 100 times." And I thought, well, why would you admit that? But that's okay. And she goes, "I've never been so uncomfortable in my life." And I said, "Are you kidding? That was the best night of my life. I've never witnessed such a train wreck on stage in my life. It was amazing." And he left the show. And apparently management was kind of like, "Well, what's the problem?" It's like, well, when you go commando in front of someone you shouldn't, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So, so either we get HR involved or you. So they traded him out for the young, cute Elvis, which was a lot easier to look at. But it was, I just couldn't believe I was in the audience to see that mess. It was like, okay. But,
Well, yeah, because you've been in wardrobe a long time. Let's draw the distinction. Seeing people naked back getting changed is one thing. That's part of the job.
mm-hmm.
Not taking and dropping trout just to show off and say, "Look at it." No, that's unacceptable. Taking your clothes out because you got to change into something else real quick, and someone's better trying to help you, and they see that you're naked, whatever. That's part of the business.
Right.
It's like backstage, on so many shows we've all done. That's what it is. We've seen plenty of that in our lives. It's not one of those things
And the thing is, at the most, you're going to see someone in their underwear or occasionally bra and panties. You don't see, rarely, are you going to see someone completely naked.
Yeah.
Now, that brings me to my next story.
Okay.
For a brief time, and my distinction, I'm the only male dresser that ever worked Crazy Girls. Now, when they moved to Planet Hollywood, I had a friend, very dear friend, who was the head of wardrobe, and she said, "Would you like to come drag?" I said, "What do you got?" So she talked to the company captain, who was Norbert Ullman's wife, lovely woman. And they brought her in, and he said, "Yeah, none of the girls." In fact, I'd worked with several of the girls in the show before over at the Excalibur, and one was a go-go girl when I was head of wardrobe supervisor at the Omnia nightclub. So I already knew these girls.
Mm-hmm.
So we would go in and we would do our pre-show and get everything set up backstage, and they were naked. And it's like, after the first 2 minutes, it's like, oh yeah, naked. Yeah. They didn't care. I didn't care. And it was one of the most fun part of that show was that it was an old school Vegas show. It was some good, clean, dirty fun. And most of my time was spent right off behind the curtain. As they took stuff off, they would hand it back to me or throw it back, and I would just pick up the body parts and take them off stage, the bras and the whatever costume pieces they had. It was the most fun I think I ever had in a show because it was just, and it was a small room. It was the old comedy club up there, and it was sat like 200 people or whatever. And it was all red with the lights and everything, and I just had a blast. And the girls were up to something in their lives, and the same thing when I was at Omnia. When they're out dancing, they're projecting a certain image that men, they're like a rolling, they're a dancing boobies.
Yep.
I get to know them as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where I really thought I had the advantage because they're like real people who have lives that are smart and funny and kind. None of these, most of the men in the audience, they were so busy trying to put their phones on the stage so they could, they were constantly grabbing phones. Guys were, it's like, what is wrong with you? Instead of trying to take a video of up under, like, why don't you just enjoy the show? They were constantly, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And so they go out and grab his phone and erase everything. It's like, I mean, perverts.
Yeah.
But anyhow, but I had so much fun doing that show. I had so much fun. And Norbert was fun. He would come in, he goes, I hear a man's voice. What's a man doing in here? He go, oh, it's Paul. It's good. You know, and then he'd come back and they treat you okay. Is everything okay? They're not giving you a bad, no, I'm good, Norbert, thank you. And he was wonderful. You know, his wife was wonderful. There was and all the girls were just as lovely as they could be. And I'm very, for the 7.5 years I was wardrobe supervisor at Omnia nightclub, I dealt with the aerialists and the go-go girls. And I had so much fun because they all accepted me, because, I went in and I said, wait, I'm not doing laundry once a week. I'm doing laundry every night. You're going to pay me to do laundry. They're not wearing sweaty G-strings from one night to the next. That's not going to happen. So I made sure that the costumes were by equity rules kept up, which means anything that touched the skin got washed every day.
Yep.
So they said, and sometimes I thought, and they said, Paul, a lot of them worked at other clubs, and they said, they described some of the stuff they found in costumes that were never washed. They said, whatever you think is going on, you are the best of any of these nightclubs going on. As far as anybody, most of them don't even have costume managers, wardrobe managers. They're just on there. Here's, wear it. And they don't know who wore it or what they did in it and all that. And it's like, that's just wrong.
Yeah.
So I did everything I could to make sure that they had clean, whatever.
Transferring skin to skin viruses or bacteria.
And there was the stuff some of them described. It's like,
it's not necessary on that stuff. It's just, come on, guys, really, we're not animals,
No.
So, anyways, Paul, that brings us to the end of the second episode right there.
How fitting.
See, and we'll be back in just a moment with another episode from Paul Hansell on the Craig L. Hayes Show, as Talbot Snow would say.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.